it is time for another first impressions experience of virtual reality. In this video, we will be taking on Le Mans Ultimate for the very first time in VR, and I was excited to make a return to this sim after many months here on the channel. Not only are there a few races to show you and some thoughts to share about the racing experience in VR, but also some comments about setting up VR on LMU, which is an interesting comparison to how it works on iRacing. So let's dive in and see what VR on LMU is all about. Now, we do need to give a very special thank you to the generous people over at Pimax. Not only have they allowed me to make this video by supplying me a Crystal Light VR headset, but they were also a major investor into Le Mans Ultimate in the early days, which has essentially allowed them the opportunity to continue to develop this game and get it to where it is today. So a huge thank you to Pimax for this opportunity for make this video. If you want to check out their product range, make sure you click the links in the description below and see what they have to offer. Of course, before we hit the track, we do need to talk about setting up LMU for VR use. Now, Le Mans Ultimate is a Steam-based game, and as a result, with the Pimax software using Steam VR, you can simply launch the game from the menu in that Steam VR mode. Most of the initial settings are applied as a result, and then it's very easy to create another graphics settings tab, which you can save for future use around the specific VR graphics settings that you want. On top of that, I was also very impressed with how in the VR mirrored mode, the menus were always centered on the external display. That meant you could easily navigate all of the menus without actually having to have the headset on. Compared to iRacing, where you needed to have the headset on to see those menus properly, I found this to be a much better solution and allowed you to have the headset off when you weren't driving, which ultimately meant it was easier to do longer sessions in VR. But with the setup out of the way, it was time to hit the grid. Let's jump into race one. So here we are, our return to Le Mans Ultimate, and we're kicking things off with this single make McLaren GT3 beginner race at Spa, 20 minutes. Now, this was not the track that I was practicing for the week in VR, so with minimal laps, we have managed to qualify in position number 12. Now, every sim racer knows Spa, so it's just a case of trying to understand this car and new tyre model, and we get the green light underway there, and we're going to watch for any mess here in turn number 1. Fortunately, everyone through here nice and cleanly, side by side with my competitor on the exit. He's left me some nice space, and a drag race down towards El Rouge. Will we be able to keep the nose in front here and take the racing line? We're going to give a bit of space, get a little bit of a touch as we get into El Rouge, and up ready on, we get a nice clean run up and out the other side. No track limits, and we are underway. A bit of carnage in the rear view mirror, so we're lucky to avoid that. And in fact, let's go back and have a quick nosy at what has happened behind. Everyone through racing on quite nicely, but side by side, 3 wide situation, a little bit of bumping there, and we get some competitors being turned around in the background, and that results in a couple of more spinners further down the Kemmel Straight. So fortunate to avoid that one. We're up to position number 9 as we make our way through the first part of this first lap. Now, there's a bit of a battle pack in front, not too much pressure behind. One of the cars behind with the drive-through at the moment, so that's going to be a gap that opens up so we can be eyes forward. Now, since my last time in LMU have introduced a new badge system for sort of driver safety rating, as it were. We are with the rookie badge, as we haven't done any official races for some time, but all trusted drivers around me, so it'll be a good chance to test out that driver badge system over this race. Can we in fact trust everyone here on the grid? Now, as I was saying, I haven't done really any laps in this car, and basically no laps on Le Mans Ultimate for a good while now, so we're going to simply hang back here, watch this battle pack kind of do its thing, and just try and get around nice and safely and learn a thing or two about this game as we move forward. bit of a moment there up in front as the only custom coloured car on this field tries to get by one of the competitors there. Had a little bit of a run, but we're just going to sit back. Now we're going to get a really scary moment here on lap number 4. A real wiggle there as we come through rally on. Just the way the car bounced over the curb, almost lost the rear there, managing to catch it, but that was certainly a scary moment, something I wasn't quite expecting. Into Bahrain on this particular lap, we're almost halfway through the race already and being nice and steady, picking up some pace, just watching these cars in front. We're going to have a change of position there. Car number 12 now, the next car up the road for me, and there's a nice gap behind still as well, so we've got no pressure behind. Finding time, see half a second up on this particular lap, just slowly going about learning, getting up towards the limit here. At this point, it's probably start worth talking about the initial experiences of LMU in VR. Now I actually found jumping into VR on the sim very natural. Potentially it's just the GT3 car, a car that I'm very familiar with across different sims, but the view, the proportions, everything about the way the car was handling, it just felt very intuitive. So it was quite simple to be in this race in VR. It didn't feel completely out of place, quite like it was on iRacing, but I was certainly driving a very different style of car on iRacing, one that I wasn't exactly familiar with at the time. Now back to the race, because we're going to have a 3 wide situation up in front here as they head down towards turn number 1. I'm quite happy not to get too involved with this one right now, waiting for things to go wrong, but once again, nice clean racing from those cars ahead. Blue and white car is now going to make it 2 wide as we get down towards our Rouge. We're going to have a big lift from myself just to give them some space. They're going to be slower through here, and they absolutely are. The blue and the orange car off on the side there. I've got a really good run looking left and right, eventually deciding to follow the blue and white car through, and a bit of a lift from car number 1 on my outside there, as I think he's trying to alleviate some of the damage from the off-track points there. As we come into Lecombe, a little bit defensive, trying to make sure we hold on to this position, but we are up to position number 8. End of that lap, and we're trying to push on a little bit here. We overdo it a bit on the exit of the bus stop chicane. Very compromised exit from that corner. I'm looking in the mirror, it's holding at about 0.2 of a second, so I think I'm safe into turn number 1, but unfortunately we do get an attack from car 1 again. He's missed the apex a bit, run a bit wide, run us off the circuit, not giving us the racing room there. And as you see, I should have really defended this corner just to be safe after being that moment at the final turn, but I think he's recognised the move as well as being a little bit too aggressive, not quite getting the job done. And I think he's lifting here on the Kemmel Straight and letting me back by, so great sportsmanship there, full credit to car number 1. It does, however, open up a bit of a gap to these next cars though, so we're going to have to focus in, try and put together a really nice lap. And you can see we are finding a little bit of time here in places, slowly getting closer to the limit of this McLaren in Le Mans Ultimate. A change of position up in front there as the blue and white car gets by, so it's car number 12 that we are chasing once again. And then the next lap, the cars behind having a really big battle down the Kemmel Straight into Lecombe, and that is essentially going to alleviate all pressure from behind. Scene of the black nosed car there in front, the gap now to these 3 growing significantly, and I'm having a really good lap this one as well, nearly a whole second up through that first sector, so we are finding time, we are finding speed in this McLaren. Now the other thing worth talking about is how I am recording this VR video. If you watch my first one, the recording wasn't ideal, so we are now using an OpenXR plugin for OBS to record this footage, and what you're seeing here in the imagery is exactly what I am seeing quality wise from the VR headset. It does look really nice in Le Mans Ultimate. Some of the elements in the distance are a little bit choppy, and I think I can probably push up some of the graphics settings with the system spec that I have, but things are looking really nice here, nice and clear, very sharp details inside the cockpit. I am running a more forward field of view for the recording, which I think makes it a little bit more natural to watch, but let me know in the comments, do you like this view or would you prefer the more pulled back view, which is what I'm seeing inside the headset. Now back to the race, we have a very odd moment as a competitor goes straight on before Blanchimont, potentially a disconnect with the force feedback or steering. It's a very odd moment there, but it does elevate us up to 5th position, which coming from 12th, having a clean race, finding some pace here, certainly not a bad way to get back into Le Mans Ultimate. We're going to finish this lap just over a second up on our previous best with the clear air that I now have, and that's going to put us at 1 minute 21.89, which I know is not a great pace around Spa, but considering the mileage I've got in this sim, we're slowly starting to work it out. Pushing on to the last lap, and unfortunately we've not been able to close down the gap to the competitor up in front there, and we just want looking to bring this one home in this 5th place position. I've got to admit, it's been nice to get back into a different sim. The driving style, the braking style, everything about this game is so different to iRacing. It's been a nice challenge, but it does feel quite easy to jump in, try a few things safely, and essentially here getting to the finish line in a nice 5th position. Happy with that, a nice return to Le Mans Ultimate, but it's not over yet. One more race and a couple more interesting points about VR. Let's dive into that one. Alright, on to race number 2. We're in the BMW M4 GT3 around the Bahrain International Circuit. This is another beginner series race with fixed setups, and this was the race that I had done a little bit of practice on. Unfortunately, a nice strong field, and we are going to start this one out of position 17, right in the thick of the mess as we head down towards a very tricky turn number 1. Again, lots of trusted drivers around me and some familiar names from the previous race. Can we have a good one? Now we're going to be nice and cautious down into turn number 1 as we get ourselves into a 3-4 wide situation into this tightening turn 1. But the interesting thing you'll notice here, and something I picked up on after the race, was essentially, despite having virtual reality and all of the field of view around me, I've been simply driving to the radar through that turn number 1, not really moving my head, not really looking at cars, as we unfortunately outbrake ourselves a little bit, tagging the back there of the Bilstein coloured car BMW in front, letting him have that position for sure. Fortunately, not too much damage to our cars here, but that was the interesting thing through that opening turn when I was looking back at the replays and the footage here, essentially not using the field of view that my virtual reality headset is giving me and driving to that radar, very accurate radar here on LMU. Where on iRacing you'd simply be getting the spotter saying left and right and using your head to turn down here into this very tricky corner, and I am starting to look at that apex. Big benefit to VR, being able to look down to those otherwise blind apexes on the single widescreen monitor that I use. But I just found that a very interesting first lap take, that despite having all of the field of view around me, not necessarily using it. A spun yellow Mustang here on the opening lap. We have taken avoiding action. We're going to lose a couple of positions and then lose out once more to an Aston Martin diving down the inside there, and we're essentially fallen back on this first lap to the back of the field with not many cars behind other than those that have had some lap 1 dramas. The action doesn't stop here on lap number 1 as a good run out of turn 13. It puts me on the tail of these 2 fighting cars in front. We back out of that one though as the Ferrari then swaps around to go down the inside of the final turn, and that gives us a run on the Aston Martin on exit. However, Aston Martin has got some good top end speed it seems, and he's able to pull away despite some slipstream there. Those guys are again side by side down into turn 1, so we're going to play it nice and safe, let these guys go about their battle here down to turn number 1 on lap number 2. Mustang going down the inside a little bit, putting the nose in through turn 1. We compromised turn number 2 and 3, and he's got to run around the outside of us there now on the straight section before turn number 4. goodness, we are having quite our moment here on these opening laps, getting boxed out a little bit. As we have a look behind, there's a battle there, that yellow Mustang trying to recover, getting himself down the inside of the Porsche there, and then leaving no space for the next corner. He finds himself spinning around at his own action as we now go down to turn number 8. On trying to go around the outside here of this Ford Mustang, but slotting in, coming down towards this very tricky turn number 10, and this is the corner that VR really does shine through, being able to look down at that apex there, try and nail the exit, and we're getting better and better at that, but very tricky with this car combo and not really being familiar with the circuit. End of lap number 2 now, through the final corner. We're going to have a real moment here with the Aston Martin going wide and then spinning back on track. Great avoidance from the Ford Mustang in front, and we managed to miss that mess, wiping the brow. Stressful stuff here in this Bahrain beginner series race. We're down to turn number 1 once again, taking a nice braking point there, but we're going to have the Porsche behind stick his nose in at the apex there, having to give some room through turn 2 here, and then the Ford Mustang in front also spinning. We're all able to avoid that one as well. So a couple of spinning cars, and we're just loosening up here, trying to relax on what has been a pretty chaotic and been a bit boxed out these first couple of laps. On to lap number 4 now. We're finally starting to get ourselves some space to get into a groove of this race. Down to this very tricky turn number 10, looking for the apex there and out the other side. We get a good run out of this one. The Ferrari that's now in front, quite a poor exit there, and we're going to get a nice run with the inside line before we get down to turn number 11. Trying to take a nice bit of cautious braking marker here, and Ferrari hits it good into the corner, but he's too wide, can't get on the power on the outside there. We're able to sail through. On to lap number 5 now, and we've got a spun car up in front, yellow flags flying. He's rejoining in front of us here, and it's in fact the driver who was in the custom liveried McLaren from the previous race, so a nice target to follow. I know he had similar pace at Spa, so this is a good reference to see if we can close up the gap to see where our pace is like here at Bahrain. Is it as good, or is it not versus the Spa race before? Through this middle sector now, and this is a really good example of just how patient you need to be with these understeery fixed setups. So easy to go too hot into the corners here. You see we missed the apex at turn number 8, and getting on the power, if you're a little bit wide, it's just very hard in Le Mans Ultimate, and I definitely need to be spending a bit more time understanding how the traction control settings and things work with these fixed setups. We've got a little bit too much of that inside curb at turn number 10. We're going to pick up a small track warning, but we are starting to find a little bit of pace. Obviously this lap will not count towards official timing, but half a second up, getting towards a low 2-minute 2. Again, I know this is far from any sort of optimal pace, completely compared to where I would hope to be in a sim like this, but so much to learn, so many different points versus iRacing. We're just happy to be staying clean, staying out of trouble so far in this race, and finally just slowly getting towards an actual limit here. Down towards the final corner of this particular lap, and again the experience of VR on this circuit with this car again just felt so natural, with a similar experience I had in the McLaren. I've spent a lot of time with the BMW in other games, and I've got to admit it just felt very natural here in this VR view. Towards turn number 1 now, a little bit of a run here on the Porsche. We have managed to close the gap over this lap, which is really good. We're going to stick to this outside line, tuck in for a late apex on the power early towards turn 4, and in fact the Porsche too much turn and throttle across that inside curb of turn 2, and he spins out, he gives up that place. We've got a bit of a gap up in front now to chase down. Yellow flag up ahead, just a car off circuit on the exit, but we're going to be slowly working our way forward, putting a bit of time into the Ferrari behind now over the next few laps, and just as I said, slowly getting up to pace here, but for this race to get exciting again, we're going to need some fighting from the group ahead. I don't think I can get there on pure pace, and that will need to happen sooner rather than later with just a handful of laps still to go. And thankfully, that is exactly what happens. 5 minutes left in the race into turn number 1, 3 wide ahead, and that is going to really slow this pack up. You see car number 17 is the car in front. That's the car that I made contact with at turn 4 at the start of the race. So we're going to slowly get towards the back here, and we need a really good lap to be able to get into this fight if we're going to have any chance of gaining any more positions. Through this middle sector, we are up to position 15, so we're a couple of spots up from where we started this race, but there's 1, 2, 3, 4 cars in front of us, and potentially with a good run, some luck, might get a few more spots here. Now, I'd say that ultimately our pace, our positioning wasn't really the goal here. It was just about getting some clean races in with VR, but I was keen to continue to test what this VR view was like around other close racing cars and seeing if we can truly understand the proximity of these cars and get a little bit better, because something I really struggled with iRacing was ultimately feeling like the perception and the depth perception of that game felt a little bit different versus the monitor. Now car 17 runs very wide at turn 11, so we're going to go up the inside, but that puts us on the outside of turn 12. We're going to try to cut back underneath towards this tricky turn 13, and we almost have a nose in there, but it's not really enough to dive in. A very tricky corner this one, so we back out of that, tuck back into the slipstream. We've ultimately lost a little bit of time to the cars in front, but we were hoping that we'd be able to make our way back. Now, unfortunately, we were not able to find any extra pace. We do manage to sort of slowly catch the group of cars ahead, but my pace just wasn't really competitive enough in some key areas to actually make any sort of challenge on car 17 through the last part of this race. We do get down to a 2 minute 1.8, so we get a little bit closer to an optimum pace, but the better drivers in this field were doing a sub 2 minute laps, so there's a lot for me to learn. Turn 10, for example, was a real struggle getting onto the power there, just not the confidence in the car, maybe some too high traction control settings. We'll have to spend a bunch more time understanding that, and as you see, cars in front just slowly pulling ahead, never really getting close enough, but thankfully putting a bit of time into some cars behind as well. So ultimately we're just in the part of the race that we should be. Down this back straight for the final time, and I've got to admit these couple of races have really shown me that LMU is a very natural game in VR. I think it was so easy to set up, it was so natural to get in and do some laps. Just really enjoyed it, and it was a lot less hassle than my time on iRacing so far, and I think there's potentially some better quality in the imagery we can get out of our PC system as well. Across the line for that 15th place, not too bad. It will certainly be helping me get out of that rookie badge soon enough, and you can see taking the headset off, hot work here with these races, a couple of races down. Now we did take one more opportunity to do some fun laps in an AI practice server. You can see how easy it is to check the pit lane here in VR, something you sort of struggle with on a single monitor, pulling out in front of other cars in pit lane. But a hypercar around Le Mans without the heads-up display on is such a great experience in virtual reality. How good this all looks. Having a glance across to the grandstand that I sat in last year for the Le Mans Classics weekend, through the Dunlop curves here, under the Dunlop bridge, absolutely fantastic visual experience. And we're going to have to spend some time getting up to speed in Hypercar and VR and try and do some races here on the channel as well. So there we are, some fun races and an excellent experience, my first impressions of racing Le Mans Ultimate in VR. To recap, the setup for Le Mans Ultimate in VR is much simpler than my experience on iRacing, and overall, despite being a bit behind on how to extract pace in these cars in this sim, I've got to say that the racing felt very natural. The field of view and the way you went about your racecraft did feel a lot simpler to jump into and drive. Now, this could be because I was using a more familiar style of car, aka GT3, versus some of the other cars I've raced on iRacing currently. But I've got to say that the whole experience of VR definitely felt quite natural, and I'm excited to try some more races and ultimately get up to pace on a sim that I haven't driven in a good while. Now, once again, we have to thank the very generous people at Pimax for the use of this Crystal Light headset. If you do want to check out their product range, make sure you click the links in the description, as well as a small discount code if you wanted to purchase a VR headset for yourself. But please do let me know in the comments, are you enjoying these VR videos? What did you think of the quality of this one versus the first one? I've certainly been trying to improve these videos, make it a better viewing experience for you, and I do hope that you're enjoying following along this VR journey. If you are new around here, please consider subscribing, and thank you very much for getting to the end of the video. As always, race hard, stay positive, and we'll see you in the next video soon. Cheers.